All right, we'll go ahead and kick off here. So the Faculty OER Awards. So this project came out of monitoring listservs that are, talking about OER and OER across the state. And it came out that the funding for the Department of Education, some of the funding allocations changed or they were opened up. So for HEERF funds, very recently, institutions are allowed to use HEERF funds for OER initiatives. So this happened around January. So the institution has allocated $25,000 of the of HEERF funds that the institution has been allocated to the library to support open initiatives for open educational resources. So the goal of the Faculty OER Awards is to use these HEERF funds to support faculty efforts to replace textbooks with open materials. And so that is the kind of the goal of this project. So you'll see here that we have broken this out into 3 funding tiers. So with the $25,000, what we're looking to do is to allocate resources in 3 ways. The first is for faculty to adopt an open textbook. And so that first funding tier is for $1,000. The second is if you were going to adapt open materials to fit your course, and that funding level is at $3,000. And then the final one is to create, and this really entails kind of heavy content creation. It's more than just adopting a textbook. It's more than adapting open materials. It's really starting to create open materials for your course. I know we have a couple questions about that, so we'll get into the differences of those in just a few minutes. But again, this effort is really to use those HEERF grant funds to expand and scale OER efforts here on Triton's campus. So let me pause here briefly and just do a quick review of open educational resources. So open educational resources, or OER, they are openly licensed, freely available educational materials that can be modified and redistributed by users. So this means we are not talking about published material, or I should say publisher material, or material that is under full copyright protection. What we are talking about is materials that are openly licensed, so have an OER or Creative Commons license, and they are freely available for others to use, to adapt for their course content. Now here I want to talk just for a moment about some of the benefits. The benefits to OER, the first one that we always talk about, it's kind of the headliner, is the cost savings to students, right? These open materials are free and freely available to students. So we know, particularly coming out of the pandemic and as we experience that move to online education and really just the challenges that come with the pandemic, students are really struggling and have been struggling to purchase textbooks on top of tuition, right? So we know that that cost savings to students is really, really important. But as faculty, that's one piece of the puzzle, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. So some of the other benefits, in addition to cost savings to students, is really the ability to adapt and revise material. If you have a publisher textbook and you're just replacing a textbook that maybe doesn't quite fit your course material, but you make it work, if you're using that publisher textbook and then you're just replacing the same thing with a free textbook, as a faculty member, that doesn't enhance or really develop your course materials at all. As faculty, there's a huge advantage to be able to adapt and revise to fit your particular course content and our student body, right? To be able to take that material and make it culturally relevant, to be able to use examples that are rooted within our students' cultural context. So that ability to adapt and revise is really, really important, and I think one of the key advantages for faculty members. This also, really enhances student learning in their classroom. So that's a big point that I wanted to highlight here. The next, again, tailor resources to your specific course context, and then also to access for students to have access to course content on day one. This really hits at equity, right? For all students to be able to access course materials on day one. Not someone who can purchase the textbook right away, or someone else has to wait a few weeks for financial aid to come through, right? All students have access on day one to your course content. So there's a lot of benefits that go beyond cost savings to students. Well, that's kind of like the fun one and the numbers one that we can, put on marketing material and highlight. There really are a lot of really key benefits to using OER and more of an open pedagogy to both faculty and students. Now, some of the challenges that faculty face in adopting open resources are subject availability. So a lot of this grant funding for the last few years have been targeted towards those high enrollment courses. So there's a lot, like in the humanities, right? There's some disciplines that have a lot of course material, where others might be more limited. And so this grant, the faculty OER rewards here at Triton, really help target that, right? You can submit a proposal if there's not quite something that fits for you or for your discipline and your courses. This will, help with that issue. Also, some of the challenges of the time and support, right? The desire to adopt open materials for your class, but not necessarily having the time to do so, or the support or the knowledge in order to do so. And again, these faculty awards will hopefully help with some of these challenges and get us over some of those hurdles. So I want to talk a little bit about the proposal form for these awards. Now, just to kind of, again, talk through the form and what you will need in order to submit a proposal. The first, just really basic information. So the form is going to ask you for your name, your department, the course name and number that you're interested in adopting open materials for. The form is also going to ask you for the cost of your current textbook. So if you know that, you can look up on the bookstore, right, do an Amazon search, find out how much it really costs for students to access your current textbook. Then this next section is just asking you to estimate the number of students impacted per semester. Now, this is just, you're not held to this, right? This is just an estimate, but about how many students typically enroll in that course, and then how many sections do you teach per semester. So again, just an estimate, but gives us a good idea of the impact to students if you were to be awarded these funds. Now, this section here, the funding tier and rationale, that's the adopt, adapt, and create sections. Those different funding tiers, you're going to choose one of them. So faculty will be considered for one proposal. So you're going to choose one funding tier, and then the next section is going to ask you to provide a rationale for that. So, provide a rationale for why you are adopting a text, right? You can do a first look at the materials that are available. There's a lot of material available in my discipline. I really think that, in this intro course, there's going to be a lot to choose from, and so I'm just going to adopt. Or you might do a first search and say, hey, there's not a ton that I can see one textbook fitting. I might need to mix and match or pull chapters from different areas. And so provide that information as a justification for the adapt funding tier. And then again, the third, the create, if you are choosing that, please tell us why, right? Why are you choosing to create if there's not current material that will fit your needs? Or to really do what we want with this open textbook, you're going to have to do a substantial amount of creation or writing in order to do so. And that's where the rationale comes in. Tell your story, right? Tell what you want to do with this project. And let us know why you're choosing the funding tier that you are. And then finally, you will need your chair and your dean to sign off on this before it comes to us for that March deadline. So know that you have to get those signatures. It could be physical, digital, right? Just get those signatures from your chair or your dean before it comes back to us. So let me go ahead and click on just a few clarifying points here. I had a few questions about how proposals would be reviewed, and it's really going to be these three pieces here where we're going to be kind of weighing proposals. So the cost of the current textbook, the estimate number of students impacted, and then again taking the tier that you're choosing into consideration. So we will be prioritizing by highest impact to students, right? So if it comes down to more faculty are submitting proposals than we have funding for, we will be choosing maybe multiple sections or the number of students enrolled in those sections. Again, prioritizing that highest impact to students. I've already mentioned this, but just wanted to clarify, only one proposal per faculty member will be considered. So again, you have to choose, if you have multiple projects, that's great, but for this award, you have to choose one project to work on. And then just highlighting the proposal date here, the proposal form to be considered is due by 5 p.m. on Thursday, March 31st. So now let me talk a little bit about the requirements, right? So what are you signing up for if you are to submit a proposal? So first, this is an informational meeting, right? So this is just to get information about this proposal process and the award. If you are allocated these funds, or if you are accepted, if the proposal is accepted, then you will be required to attend a training workshop. So this is going to cover, go a little bit more in depth on open materials, OER licenses, right, how to search for these materials. So it'll be a 1 hour kind of boot camp on how to do OER and how to best start engaging with these materials. That is going to be in person, it's going to be online, and it will also be recorded. So the attendance at that workshop should not be a barrier. And right now that is targeted to be held sometime in April. So before the end of the semester, we'll offer it in person, online, and as a recorded workshop. So this is really just to start giving you the education, the tools to feel confident about engaging in this project. Then you obviously will be doing the work, right? You'll be evaluating, looking at materials, starting to gather what is going to be the most useful to you, or writing and creating those materials. So that is part of this project. That's what you're responsible for. You are committing to implementing these open materials in at least one section of the course this coming fall, so fall 22. If you are adopting or adapting materials, you are going to be given until spring of 2023 if you are creating materials. So you get an extra semester to, if you need to reorganize your course, right, or just give you a little bit more time to incorporate that into your course if you are creating. But again, you are committing to at least one section being taught with the open materials in the fall or in the spring, depending on your funding tier. You are also committing to administering a student survey through Blackboard for at least 3 semesters. So part of this project is going to be creating or getting student feedback. And so we will be assessing the use of these open materials in these courses for 3 semesters. So just know that's also a piece of this as well. And then finally, this is per the grant requirements and when funds need to be spent by. So all work and all paperwork on this has to be signed and turned in by July 8th. This is a very hard deadline. You can tell because it is in bold, right? It is very, very hard deadline. Everything has to be turned in by July 8th. So please know this ahead of time before you sign up the proposal, right? Look at your calendars for the spring. Look at your personal calendars for the summer. This will not, we can't pay you after this, right? So you can continue the work, but you will not get paid after this. So please, please, please make note of the final deadline. Everything has to be turned in by July 8th.
2023 or 2022?
2022, this summer. This summer. Yeah. And I saw questions come in and I will address those in just a moment. So a timeline, right, for this project. The end of March, March 31st, is the proposal that is due. So again, that is by 5 p.m. on March 31st. Give us a little bit to make our funding decisions, so you'll receive an email by April 8th with those funding decisions. At that point, we'll fill out that blue form, right, that will kind of start the clock on the work that you'll be doing as part of these awards. So fill out the blue form here, and then it's kind of, you know, off to the races, right? So April through June, we'll do that required training. So we'll do the workshop to give you those tools to complete this project. And then please know that you will also be paired with a librarian for one-on-one support. So you will not be off on your own. You will be paired with the librarian. You will have, you know, the name, email, right, office phone number, all of that of a librarian who will be able to assist you throughout this process. So how I have kind of explained this work to librarians is we are, right, the curators. So we're going to take this ocean of open material that's out and available to you and start to curate it down to like a small pond, right? So as faculty members in the disciplines, you are the content area experts. You are making those choices and the evaluating piece of, is this appropriate for my course, right? Making those evaluations, but what we're going to do is be a consultant on this project, right? Help you narrow those materials down. We can help look over your syllabus, look at the course content that you're teaching, and kind of help you narrow those resources down so it's not overwhelming the amount of information that you have, but that you can really focus your time and effort on making those choices of what's going to be the most appropriate for your course content. Then, come June 30th, we'll do kind of a final review of all the projects. So think of that as more of an internal deadline of making sure that material is reviewed and in its final versions. And then for July 8th, again, that is the absolute last day. If you are adopting material and you are done by May, excellent, right? You can have this done before you leave campus for the spring semester. You could choose the textbook that you're adopting and be done, but just know that July 8th is the absolute last day for the deadline where we need to sign those forms, turn all paperwork into HR so that you are paid on time and the grant funds are dispersed on time. All right, so now we are entering that portion of questions. So any questions here in the room, and then we can also take a look at the chat questions and what is coming in. So Risa said if you're creating but won't launch until spring of 23, why work done by July? Grant timelines. Hopefully that was clear, but those funds have to be spent, and we walked it back slightly for the paperwork to get through HR, but that is, these funds have to be spent by that time. If it is a larger project and you are creating course materials, that material may be done, but you may need to reorganize your Blackboard shell, right? Get everything in place, so we'll give you a little bit more time to do that. If you are ready to go by fall, you could absolutely, run that course in the fall. But from, this side, just wanted to give you a little bit more time if you needed that. Even though the grant, it ends and you have to be done by July, if you have a little bit more work in your Blackboard shell that you have to do, feel free to take that time to spring, but you are committing then to deploying by the spring semester. I hope that was clear. Please let me know. Pat, if you want to adopt an OER text, but after going through this process, nothing sufficient quality or relevance ends up being found. Yeah, I guess that could absolutely be a conclusion. And I would say at that point, you would probably just step out of the process, right? So if it truly is that you cannot find course materials that are going to be helpful for your course, I think you would just step out and remove yourself from the process. We can talk through that if those are concerns. I can get clarification if that's an issue, but yeah, I think you can probably just step out and say this, isn't working for my course or for my course content. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you want to follow up on that. Great. Okay. Yep. Any other questions? Christopher.
I'm always good for a question.
Absolutely.
So I guess just trying to wrap my head around the timeline.
Yes.
So what we're being asked to do is submit a proposal and make a selection among the 3 amounts.
Yes.
However, we won't get the training or the resources of a librarian until after that has been done. So I guess guidance on how you putting in your proposal, like how you make the determination.
Yeah, reach out to me. Absolutely open for help on that end. So if you have no idea what's out there, please get in contact with me and we can talk through some of those options. I can send you some links of some potential open textbooks. You can say, yes, there's a ton here, right? I'm overwhelmed. I'll just have to spend my time choosing the text. Or, yeah, there's not a ton of material. It looks like maybe we'll have to adapt. Or we're really not seeing a lot, and so maybe it needs to be a create option. We can absolutely talk through that. If you're have no idea what is out there for your discipline in terms of open material, please reach out to me. I'm happy to have those conversations on the front end before you even commit. Yeah. And then I do, Angela. Yeah.
I might have missed this, but could you define open material? Like, I know of a particular publication where they have all of their articles available to anyone online. Can that be part of my textbook that I'm creating? Like, what are the copyright?
Yeah.
I might have missed it.
No, great question. Let me go ahead. I will share this in the chat as well. But the library has a guide that's available. I don't know if it's going to link here. I will pull it up in just a moment. It's library.triton.edu/OER. So I can also put that in the chat, and I will show the link. Library.triton.edu/OER has a lot of information on OER, what an open license is, and where to find that kind of material. That's a great resource. Also, you can send me an email. I'm happy to review the material and give you some idea of whether or not that is open. The important piece to note is if it has a Creative Commons license. So the publication may be freely available, but still under full copyright protection. So free does not equal open. Open always equals free, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So if it is open, it is going to be freely available online, but just because it's freely available online does not make it open. So it depends on the journal, depends on the publisher. There's a lot of open access journals. So you would just be looking for a Creative Commons or an open license on that material. That will be what will clue you in on if that journal is an open journal or not.
Okay.
So feel free to send me stuff. Can absolutely, again, review and answer any of those questions. Yeah, Jim?
Okay, I did a class last fall, and I put together, let's say, 20 resources.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them were my own stuff, like a paper from grad school and a chunk of my master's thesis.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just 2 chunks out of 20.
Mm-hmm.
The other 18, I thought I was getting away with something legal when I would just get, let's say, a book from the library,
Mm-hmm.
but only copy like 3 pages out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's like a limit or a certain point at which I've exceeded the copyright or how that works. I thought as an institution we had the okay to go ahead and copy a certain amount of stuff.
So Jim, great conversation, separate conversation from the one we're having right now, because for this material, you cannot use any publisher content or anything that is still under full copyright, no matter the amount.
Okay.
So different conversation. Yes, you are able to use that in online courses. Separate from this conversation, yes, this has to be all open material, hardline.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So different. It cannot be a published material that is under full copyright.
So if I'm taking, I definitely cannot adopt a textbook that's already this topic that I'm doing. So I'm going to have to combine stuff.
Publish a full copyright holder publisher textbook. You can adopt a full open textbook.
No, I'm saying I know for a fact I won't be.
Oh, okay.
Because no one got a textbook like
Okay.
that. So I'm going to be building it.
Sure.
So I'm going to be building out these resources, right? So I think that means, and because only a little bit of it is my own material, I think that means I'd be in the adapt.
I agree.
Okay.
Yep. And this is a conversation I'm happy to have with anyone.
Okay.
Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I know about the material so far. Does this sound appropriate? And I can absolutely give you an opinion on that. Yeah. But that I agree with that. It sounds like you're falling in the adapt category. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Pat, are you creating actual OER materials? Like you don't have any copyright rights over it after you create it. Pat, you still hold the copyright, but it has to be released under an open license.
Oh.
So meaning that once you create it, right, you can't take open materials and then hold it as full copyright. That's not how open licenses work. So if you're using open material, it also has to be released under an open license. So you still hold the copyright to that material, but you are allowing other people to use it and to reuse it and to adapt it as well. That's kind of that world of open licenses. So we can talk about that, or if you have any concerns about that, I'm happy to show you documentation and kind of show you more about open licenses. You will still have copyright over the material. People will have to attribute that material to you, but when it's released again, it will be open material. You can't use open material and then close the copyright on that, or pull it back, have it be more restrictive, if that makes sense. So Pat, I'm happy to have that conversation also. Can we link to copyright material within the OER material? No, no. It cannot be under full copyright. It has to be under an open license. So again, those are conversations we can have if you want to talk through specific materials. But in this project, it is going to be all material that has a Creative Commons license or is labeled as open.
Yeah, this is where I really need the librarian consultant
Yes.
to make sure I'm zeroing in on only OER. And
Yes.
how to get there, how to find that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead. I think this point is probably a great point for me to show you. I'm going to close out my presentation for just a moment, and I'm going to show you the library's material because you can go ahead and start exploring this right now. So I'm going to go ahead and show this site. This is library.triton.edu/OER. So again, this is going to be a great place as a starting point if you would like to read more about open educational resources, right? What are they? A little bit about open licenses. And then this is going to be a great place to explore the different types of licenses. Again, it's kind of on a spectrum. So
Wow.
full, like all rights reserved, right? Full copyright is the most restrictive. Public domain is the least restrictive. So that means things that the federal government has published are in public domain that have been funded by tax dollars, things that are no longer, right, they're outside of copyright, things before 1920, where the copyright has expired on those authors. This section in between gives you some more latitude here. These are Creative Commons licenses. So they go from most restrictive to where you can only use all the way up to you can remix, adapt, add to, you just have to give attribution. That is the the least restrictive next to public domain. And for this project, we're going to be camping out kind of in this area. So where others can remix, adapt, use your resources, they have to give attribution, right? That is going to be where we're living. So just know that there is a spectrum of Creative Commons licenses that give you more flexibility than just all rights reserved or public domain. You still hold the copyright to your material, but there's more flexibility for others to use. So this is going to be a great spot to, again, learn more about it, figure out the different types of licenses, what full copyright has here, and then to start exploring some of the course content you can use. I would start by looking at some of the OER repositories, some open access journals, but really specifically, I would start with open textbooks. This is going to be, quite a few libraries of open textbooks. I would highlight something like LibreText or OpenStax. It's where a ton of this material resides. So these are going to be great spots to start figuring out, like, is there a full textbook for the course that I teach? Is there enough in my discipline where I think I would be able to adopt, or am I really starting to lean towards adapt? There's a few chapters in different textbooks that'll be helpful, but there really isn't one textbook that's going to fit my needs. And this is, again, where we get to that really exciting part of open education and open educational resources, where you have full ownership of that text and what you put into that textbook, so really able to start to adapt those course materials to what you teach in your particular course. Yes?
When you say, there's a couple things where I wasn't quite sure who you were referring to. When you say full ownership and you said your copyright and stuff like that, in our role here, we don't have any rights to anything, right? We're just using somebody else's rights and we're using it properly. But we don't actually come away with any rights, right?
When you do this project, if you are adapting, or I'm sorry, if you are adopting, so let's say you take an OpenStax textbook and you adopt it, right? That's, your name's not going to be on it. If you adapt or create, your name will be on it.
Oh, and then, so mine will be out, let's say, in the OER database, in which case it will be under one of those headings that's way off, I'm going to go ahead and use it. end of the scale?
It will be,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
Others will be able to use your
Yeah.
use your work because it will be released under an open license.
Okay,
Correct.
all the way over
Correct.
on the right, on your chart.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Not public domain,
Oh,
but
not
it
that
will
far?
be not that far, but
Okay.
it'll be the least restrictive of the OER licenses. Yeah, it will be
Okay.
open material. Others can adapt,
Yeah.
revise, build off of your work if they find it
Yeah.
helpful and useful to do so.
So one away from public domain?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Great question.
cool. But I'm not gonna make any money off it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to. I just think it would
Absolutely.
be an
We are
honor.
all in the realm of free material. But again, that is where these grants come in because you know it is supporting you in your time and your effort and your expertise to review the material, right? Even just reviewing the material to determine if it's a textbook that you would like to use is being compensated. Also then, if you're going to adapt, pull different chapters together, create it so it's going to be a course or a textbook that best fits your course, that is also, you're being compensated for your time and your expertise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. I would be honored if somebody wanted to use my material. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
That'd
absolutely.
be fun.
Absolutely. Yes, Christopher.
So you may or may not be able to answer this question. I
Yes.
understand OER materials to be free content. Have you, in your experience, ever seen there are also available test banks or things like that, so that if I'm adopting, I'm not
Yes.
having to recreate every assessment that's
Yes.
required?
Oh,
Yeah, so if we go back to, let me share my file again. This definition is chosen very specifically. So OER is openly licensed for available educational materials. So it's not necessarily just textbooks or text-based material. Open materials can be a lot of things, including PowerPoints, tests, test banks, quizzes, handouts, right? It runs the
Videos.
full, videos, all of those things. Again, not just text-based. Videos, things like that are also included. So yes, there is a lot of material that falls under this definition. So you're correct, it is not just text-based works, but can also include a lot of the things that you also incorporate in your classroom, PowerPoints, test banks, things like that.
Recipes.
But if we can access those tests and test banks, doesn't that mean our students can too?
Not necessarily. They do hold a lot of the websites that hold like test banks. You have to create an account. You have to use your Triton.edu email address. There's like a verification. So it again depends on what you use, but there's quite a few resources that require a vetting process.
Okay.
Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, somebody's thinking this through.
Yeah.
I know, they can. It's true, they do. You're right.
All right. I
Yeah,
want
wanna take your
to
class now.
be considerate of everyone's time. So we're gonna pause there. But again, if you have any questions about the timeline, about the support that you will receive, about the requirements, what you're committing to, or about any of the preliminary process of determining which funding tier might be the best for you, how these materials will be shared, please let me know. Just send me an email. We have a few weeks right until that proposal process is due. So reach out to me, send me an email. I'm happy to meet one-on-one, and I'm really excited. Thank you. I'm excited too. Excited to kind of embark on this process with you, and I'm here with anything that you need, any questions that you have, just reach out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren. Yay.